Money can buy almost anything. A penthouse overlooking Singapore's glittering skyline, a flawless reputation among the elite, even a 24-year-old bride flown in from the Philippines, hand-picked for her beauty and promised purity. But some men don't just want a wife, they want absolute control. And when control becomes obsession, when perfection becomes a transaction, the consequences turn deadly. He paid $2 million for a virgin bride who would never question him. She signed the contract to save her family from ruin. But what happens when the bride you purchased for purity uncovers the darkness you've buried? Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Simon Lau didn't inherit his fortune, he built it, brick by brick, deal by deal, with the kind of ruthless precision that left no room for error. At 55, he had transformed himself from a middle-class nobody into one of Singapore's most successful property investors. His portfolio included commercial buildings in the financial district, luxury condominiums along the marina, and strategic partnerships with aviation companies that made him millions before he turned 40. To those who worked with him, Simon was a machine, emotionless, calculating, never rattled. Every aspect of his life reflected this need for order. His suits were tailored to perfection, not a thread out of place. His office was sterile, minimalist, everything labeled and filed with military efficiency. Meetings ran exactly as scheduled, no small talk, no pleasantries, just business. Colleagues admired his discipline but found him cold, almost robotic. He never laughed at jokes, he never shared personal stories. He existed in a bubble of control so tight that even casual conversation felt like a breach of protocol. But it was his private life that sparked the most curiosity. Simon had no wife, no girlfriend, no dating history anyone could recall. At company events, he arrived alone and left alone. When younger executives asked about his personal life, he would smile thinly and change the subject. Some speculated he was married to his work. Others whispered he simply had no interest in relationships. A few, however, noticed something stranger: the way he studied young women at business functions, his gaze lingering just a moment too long, assessing them like property. What nobody realized was that Simon had been searching for years, not for love, not for companionship, but for something far more specific. He wanted a woman who met an exact checklist: young, beautiful, obedient, untouched. Someone who wouldn't challenge him, wouldn't bring baggage, wouldn't have a past that could embarrass him. He wanted a blank canvas he could shape into his ideal. He researched international marriage brokers. He reviewed profiles like he reviewed investment portfolios. He rejected dozens of candidates for minor imperfections: too outspoken, too educated, too independent. Then he found Arisa Velasco, and everything aligned. But Simon wasn't looking for love. He was looking for ownership. Arisa Velasco was the kind of beautiful that stopped people mid-sentence. Long, dark hair that fell past her shoulders, porcelain skin that seemed to glow under the Philippine sun, and a gentle smile that made her seem almost angelic. In her small town in Laguna, people knew her as the quiet girl who helped her aunt sell vegetables at the market, who never missed Sunday Mass, who dreamed of becoming a teacher someday. She was 24 years old, devoutly religious, and drowning in circumstances beyond her control. Her mother had died when she was 16, leaving Arisa and her younger brother in the care of their aunt, a woman who tried her best but could barely keep food on the table. The debts piled up fast: medical bills from her mother's final months, loans taken out just to survive. Then her brother's diagnosis, a heart condition that required surgery they could never afford. The doctors said he had maybe 2 years without the operation. Arisa worked multiple jobs, but the money was never enough. She was watching her family collapse in slow motion, powerless to stop it. That's when her aunt introduced her to a woman named Mrs. Chen, a marriage broker who operated quietly between Manila and Singapore. Mrs. Chen didn't advertise. She didn't have an office. She met clients in hotel lobbies and coffee shops, speaking in low tones about opportunities abroad for young Filipina women willing to marry wealthy foreign men. The pitch was always the same: a better life, financial security, a way out of poverty. Mrs. Chen showed Arisa photographs of Simon Lau, successful businessman, property investor, respectable. She explained the arrangement with clinical detachment, a marriage settlement of $2 million US. $1 million paid up front to Arisa's family, another $1 million after the wedding. The only requirement: Arisa must remain pure before the ceremony. No previous relationships, no scandals, no complications. Arisa felt sick. This wasn't marriage, it was a transaction. She would become a purchased bride, bought and paid for like furniture. But then she thought about her brother's failing heart, about her aunt's exhausted face, about the crushing weight of debt that would never lift without help. What choice did she really have? She agreed. Within weeks, everything moved with frightening speed. Simon flew her to Singapore for etiquette training, how to walk, how to speak, how to dress for his social circle. She was isolated from other Filipinos, monitored constantly, polished and prepared like a product being readied for market. The woman who trained her never asked if she was okay. Nobody did. Have you ever been in a position where survival meant sacrificing your freedom? What would you have done? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. The penthouse was everything Arisa had never experienced. Floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Marina Bay, marble floors so polished she could see her reflection, furniture that cost more than her family's house. Simon gave her a walkthrough on her first day, pointing out rooms with the enthusiasm of a man showing off an investment. The master bedroom, the study where he worked, the guest rooms she was never to enter without permission. Everything was pristine, sterile, controlled. At first, Arisa tried to see it as generosity. He bought her expensive clothes, jewelry she was afraid to wear, skincare products she didn't know how to use. He arranged for a personal stylist to teach her how to dress for his business events. He even hired a tutor to improve her English. But the gifts came with conditions, silent, unspoken rules that revealed themselves slowly, like traps she didn't see until she'd already stepped in them. She wasn't allowed to leave the penthouse without his permission. Not to the mall, not to the park, not even to the lobby downstairs. When she asked if she could explore the neighborhood, Simon's face went cold. "You don't know Singapore," he said calmly. "It's not safe for someone like you." When she suggested meeting other Filipinos in the city, he dismissed it immediately. "You're here to build a life with me, not to socialize with strangers." Her phone became a leash. Simon installed an app that tracked her location in real time, though she rarely went anywhere. He monitored her social media, questioning every post, every comment, every like. Once, she messaged a childhood friend back home, and Simon confronted her that evening. "Who is this person? Why are you talking to them?" The accusation in his voice made her stomach twist. She learned quickly to keep her phone face down, to message no one, to exist in silence. The surveillance extended everywhere. Security cameras in the hallways, a laptop in the study that she suspected was monitoring her browsing history. Simon would ask seemingly casual questions. "What did you do today? Who did you speak to?" But his eyes were always watching, calculating, measuring her answers for inconsistencies. Arisa told herself it was cultural. Maybe wealthy Singaporean men were protective like this. Maybe she just didn't understand his world yet. But late at night, when Simon was asleep and the penthouse was quiet, she felt it, the crushing weight of being watched, of being owned, of being trapped in luxury that felt more like a prison than a home. There were rooms she wasn't allowed to ask about. A locked filing cabinet in his study, a storage closet he kept padlocked. When she mentioned them once, Simon's expression shifted just for a second into something cold and dangerous. "Those are private," he said. "Don't go near them." She stopped asking questions. She smiled when he wanted her to smile. She stayed silent when he needed silence. But the unease grew, gnawing at her like a slow poison. Something was wrong. Something about this place, about Simon, about the way he looked at her, sometimes not with love, but with possession. But the penthouse held secrets far darker than surveillance. Secrets buried in locked cabinets and forgotten files. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Simon had left for a meeting at his office downtown, something about a property deal closing by end of day. He was in a rush, which was unusual for him. Arisa watched from the living room window as his black Mercedes disappeared into traffic. The penthouse felt different when he was gone, quieter, but not peaceful, just empty. She wandered through the rooms, trying to shake the restlessness that had been building for weeks. That's when she noticed it. The filing cabinet in Simon's study, the one he always kept locked, was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to see that the padlock was hanging loose, unlatched. Had he forgotten? Had he left in such a hurry that he'd made a mistake? Or was this something else, a test to see if she'd betray his trust? Arisa stood in the doorway, heart pounding. Every instinct told her to walk away, to close the cabinet, to pretend she'd seen nothing. But curiosity is a powerful thing, especially when it's mixed with fear. She needed to know what Simon was hiding. She needed to understand why the surveillance, why the control, why the locked rooms and forbidden questions. She crossed the study and pulled the cabinet open. Inside were folders, dozens of them organized with the same obsessive precision Simon applied to everything. Property documents, financial statements, legal contracts. And then, near the back, a folder that didn't belong. It was labeled with two names she didn't recognize, Maria Santos and Liza Reyes, both Filipina names. Arisa's hands trembled as she opened it. The first document was a marriage certificate. Maria Santos, aged 22, married to Simon Lau 6 years ago. Beneath it, an immigration record showing her arrival in Singapore. Then a brief news clipping from a Manila newspaper, small, barely noticeable, reporting that Maria Santos had gone missing 3 months after her wedding. The article was vague. No details, no follow-up, just a mention that authorities were investigating. The second file was worse. Liza Reyes, aged 23, married to Simon Lau 8 years ago. Another immigration record, another brief marriage, and then a police report from Manila, stamped and filed but never resolved. The words jumped off the page. Missing person, presumed domestic accident. No body found, no witnesses. Case closed due to lack of evidence. Arisa felt the room tilt. 2 women, 2 marriages, 2 disappearances. But it was the photograph that made her blood turn to ice. Tucked in the back of Liza's file was a picture of a young woman standing in front of what looked like Simon's penthouse building. She had long dark hair, porcelain skin, a gentle smile. She looked so much like Arisa that for a moment she thought she was staring at herself. The resemblance was terrifying, not coincidental, but deliberate. Simon had chosen her because she looked like Liza. Arisa flipped the photograph over. On the back, in Simon's precise handwriting, were 2 words that stopped her heart. She lied. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't the first. She wasn't even the second. Simon had done this before, found desperate young Filipina women, promised them money and security, brought them to Singapore, and then made them disappear. The obsession with purity, the surveillance, the control, it wasn't about love or even possession. It was about maintaining an illusion. And when that illusion broke, when these women failed to meet his impossible standard, when they lied or disappointed him in some way, he erased them. Maria, Liza, and now Arisa. She was next. The folder slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She had to leave. She had to run. But how? Her passport was locked in Simon's safe. She had no money of her own, no friends in Singapore, no way to call for help without him knowing. And what if he already knew she'd found the files? What if leaving the cabinet unlocked wasn't a mistake at all? What would you do if you discovered you were chosen to replace someone who disappeared? Would you run, or would you confront the monster? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Arisa spent the next 3 hours pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. Her mind raced through every possible escape plan, and each one ended the same way, trapped. No passport, no money, no phone that wasn't monitored. Even if she made it to the Philippine embassy, Simon would find her before she reached the door. He had connections, resources, power she couldn't match. Running wasn't an option, which left only one choice. She would confront him. The decision felt insane, suicidal even, but what else could she do? If Simon planned to make her disappear like the others, at least she'd face him standing, not cowering. She gathered the files, Maria's news clipping, Liza's police report, the photograph with those two devastating words on the back, and spread them across the dining table. Evidence. Proof. An accusation he couldn't deny. Then she waited. Every sound made her jump. The elevator in the hallway, footsteps outside the door, her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. She rehearsed what she'd say, trying to keep her voice steady, trying to sound brave when all she felt was terror. Who were they? What did you do to them? Am I next? The words felt hollow, inadequate for the horror she'd uncovered. At 7:32 p.m., she heard the key in the lock. Simon walked in carrying his briefcase, his expression calm and unreadable as always. But the moment he saw her standing by the dining table, something shifted in his eyes. He glanced at the scattered files, then back at her. No surprise, no panic, just cold calculation. You went through my things, he said quietly. Arisa's voice shook despite her best effort. Who were they? Maria and Liza. Who were they? Simon set his briefcase down slowly, deliberately, like a man buying time to decide how much truth to reveal. They were mistakes, he said finally. Women who wasted my time and money with lies. Lies? Arisa's voice rose, fear turning to fury. They're dead, Simon. They came here just like me, and they disappeared. His face hardened. They weren't what they promised. Maria had a boyfriend back in Manila she never mentioned. Liza had been with men before she lied about everything. I gave them opportunities, security, and they betrayed me. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if explaining a failed business deal. I paid for purity. I deserved loyalty. They failed. The words hung in the air like poison. This wasn't remorse. This was justification. And now what? Arisa's hands trembled as she held up the photograph of Liza. You picked me because I looked like her? Because you needed a replacement? Simon took a step forward. You were supposed to be different. Were? The past tense made her blood run cold. What happens now, Simon? Do I disappear too? His expression darkened. You shouldn't have gone through my things. What happened next came fast and violent. Simon lunged toward the table, trying to grab the files. Arisa grabbed them first, backing away. He followed, his calm demeanor shattering into rage. Give those to me. No. She threw the files across the room, pages scattering like evidence in a courtroom. I won't let you erase me. Simon's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with crushing force. She screamed, yanking free, and stumbled backward into the glass coffee table. It shattered under her weight, shards exploding across the marble floor. Simon came at her again, and she grabbed a piece of broken glass, holding it up like a weapon. The fight became chaos. Furniture overturned, picture frames smashed against walls. Neighbors later described hearing crashes, screaming, the unmistakable sounds of violence. Someone, maybe Arisa, maybe Simon, managed to dial emergency services. The call was frantic, barely coherent. Please, help, he's going to kill. Then the line went dead. In those final minutes, two people fought, not just for dominance but for survival. Singapore police force officers arrived at the penthouse at 8:17 p.m., responding to the aborted emergency call. When no one answered the door, they forced entry, breaking through the electronic lock with authorization from building management. What they found inside would haunt even the most experienced among them. The living room looked like a war zone. Overturned furniture blocked the hallway. Shattered glass covered the marble floor, glittering under the overhead lights like diamonds. Blood, thick, dark, still wet, streaked across the white walls in violent arcs. More blood pooled near the dining table, soaking into the expensive Persian rug Simon had imported from Tehran. But it was the study that held the worst of it. Two bodies lay collapsed on the floor, separated by mere feet. One was motionless, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, blood spreading beneath them in a widening circle. The other was barely breathing, shallow gasps, trembling fingers, life clinging by a thread. Paramedics rushed in immediately, working frantically to stabilize the survivor, while crime scene investigators documented everything with cold professional detachment. The scene told a story, but not a clear one. There were signs of a prolonged struggle, defensive wounds on both bodies, broken fingernails, bruising around throats and wrists. Furniture had been used as weapons or shields. A heavy glass vase lay cracked near the bookshelf, blood smeared across its base. And there, near the survivor's hand, was the weapon, a long shard of glass from the shattered coffee table, still slick with blood. But whose blood? And who had wielded it in those final, desperate moments? The evidence was contradictory. Both people had injuries suggesting they'd been attacked. Both had fought back. The forensic team found blood from both bodies in multiple locations: the living room, the study, even the hallway leading to the bedroom. It wasn't a clean crime scene with a clear aggressor and victim. It was chaos, desperation, two people locked in a fight where only one could walk away. The survivor rushed to Singapore General Hospital under police guard, was barely conscious, unable to give a coherent statement. Investigators would have to wait, hoping they'd survive long enough to explain what happened. By morning, the media had descended like vultures. Millionaire property tycoon found dead in penthouse bloodbath. Foreign bride involved in fatal domestic incident. The headlines screamed scandal, painting Simon as either a victim of betrayal or a monster who got what he deserved, depending on which outlet you read. In Manila, Arisa's family watched the news in horror, demanding answers from authorities who had none to give. Maria's family came forward, asking why their daughter's disappearance had never been properly investigated. Liza's relatives contacted lawyers, seeking justice that was 6 years overdue. The case became a media firestorm, one dead, one fighting for life, and a penthouse full of secrets that refused to stay buried. Who do you think survived? The man who controlled everything, or the woman who discovered his darkest secret? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Arisa survived. Barely. She spent 3 weeks in intensive care, her body broken but her will to live somehow intact. Simon Lau was pronounced dead at the scene. Multiple stab wounds, massive blood loss, no chance of resuscitation. The official investigation labeled it self-defense, though the legal battles would drag on for months. Prosecutors questioned whether the force used was justified. Defense lawyers argued she'd fought for her life against a man with a history of making women disappear. As investigators dug deeper into Simon's past, the horror multiplied. Hidden bank accounts revealed payments to marriage brokers across Southeast Asia, not just Mrs. Chen, but an entire network operating between Manila, Jakarta, and Singapore. Financial records showed Simon had been shopping for brides for over a decade, methodically searching for women who fit his requirements. But Maria Santos and Liza Reyes, the 2 previous brides whose files Arisa had found, were never located. Authorities searched Simon's properties, interviewed associates, tracked financial transactions. Nothing. No bodies. No leads. Just 2 families left with questions that would never be answered and graves that would remain forever empty. The marriage broker network became the subject of international investigation, but prosecutions were difficult. Mrs. Chen vanished before police could arrest her. Other brokers claimed ignorance, insisting they'd facilitated legitimate marriages, nothing illegal. The system that enabled Simon's crimes remained largely intact, operating in shadows where desperate women meet wealthy men and transactions masquerade as love. Arisa's future remained uncertain. She returned to the Philippines physically scarred and psychologically shattered. Her family had the money Simon had already paid, blood money that saved her brother's life, but couldn't erase the trauma. She faced judgment from her community, whispers that she should have known better, that she'd brought the violence on herself. The uncomfortable truth lingered. How many other transactions like this happen every year? How many women, desperate to save their families, sign contracts that strip away their humanity? How many men, wealthy and untouchable, believe money gives them ownership over another person's life? Simon Lau's penthouse was sold, cleaned, and occupied by new tenants who never learned what happened there. But the questions remain, unanswered and haunting. Arisa's story is a brutal reminder that desperation makes us vulnerable in ways we never anticipate. When survival is on the line, when a family member needs surgery, when debts are crushing, when there seems to be no other way out, we make choices we'd never consider otherwise. Predators like Simon understand this. They don't just offer money, they offer hope to people who have none left. And that's when exploitation becomes possible. Simon's obsession with control ultimately destroyed him. He believed money could buy perfection, that surveillance could guarantee loyalty, that ownership could replace genuine connection. But control is an illusion. The tighter he gripped, the more desperate his victims became to break free. His need for absolute dominance didn't protect him, it created the very circumstances that led to his death. The most tragic element of this story is the silence that allowed it to continue. Maria Santos disappeared, and the case went cold. Liza Reyes vanished, and authorities labeled it a domestic accident. 2 women were erased, and nobody demanded answers loud enough to stop Simon from finding a 3rd victim. Silence protects predators. It allows patterns to repeat. It costs lives. There were red flags everywhere: surveillance apps, isolation from friends and family, monitored communication, locked rooms, forbidden questions. In healthy relationships, love doesn't require constant tracking. Partnership doesn't demand absolute obedience. Trust doesn't need surveillance cameras. When someone isolates you, monitors your every move, and punishes curiosity, that's not protection, that's imprisonment. Arisa survived because she questioned what she wasn't supposed to question. She opened the cabinet she was told to avoid. She confronted the man everyone feared. Curiosity, in this case, became survival. We teach people, especially women, to be polite, to not cause trouble, to trust authority figures. But sometimes, questioning everything is what keeps you alive. Awareness is empowerment. Recognizing exploitation before it's too late, understanding that desperation shouldn't cost your freedom, knowing that no amount of money justifies ownership of another human being, these truths can save lives. Have you ever ignored red flags because you needed something desperately? What could Arisa's family have done differently? How can we protect vulnerable people from predators disguised as saviors? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Simon Lau paid $2 million for a bride he believed would remain silent, obedient, and pure. Arisa Velasco signed a contract to save her family from financial ruin. What neither of them expected was that curiosity would lead to discovery, discovery would lead to confrontation, and confrontation would end in a bloodbath that exposed years of hidden evil. 2 women before Arisa disappeared without a trace. She became the one who survived to tell the truth. But here's the haunting reality. Simon Lau isn't unique. Men like him exist in every country, every social class, every community. They use wealth as a weapon, desperation as leverage, and silence as protection. They operate in plain sight, hidden behind respectability and power. Stay vigilant. Question what doesn't feel right. Speak up when you see exploitation disguised as opportunity. Arisa's story is a warning written in blood. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Have you heard similar stories in your community? Share them below. What do you think should happen to marriage brokers who enable these transactions? If this story opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button and stay with True Crime Journal HQ for more stories that matter, stories that expose the darkness others want buried. Because sometimes, the deadliest secrets are the ones we pay to keep hidden.